All right, welcome back to another episode of Health with Hashimoto's. And I am so excited to have a guest for you today. You are just going to love this interview. I have Shannon Davis with us, and she is a dietitian. She's a registered dietitian with 18 years of experience. She helps people reverse chronic condition by addressing root causes, especially insulin resistant, rather than relying on outdated calorie counting models. Her background spans everything from organ transplant to sports nutrition to bariatrics and pharmaceutical sales. And today she has her own virtual practice as she integrates tools like low carb and ketogenic diets, intermittent fasting, and nutraceuticals, all to help people support their own healing. She's also a coach. She serves on a founding board of the American Diabetes Society and works with an endocrinologist. And I am so excited to have you here today, Shannon. You are going to be a blessing for every single listener who is struggling with, like, what do I do? How do I eat? Like balancing it all and figuring out what is good for them. So before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Esther, for having me. I love when I get an opportunity to just try to teach people and help, clear up some of the confusion because there's so much information out there. I think a lot of times people want to do right. They just are in like analysis paralysis because they don't know what to do. And so I appreciate the opportunity. My story, I mean, you gave me such an amazing introduction. Thank you. Is like it's different. I became a dietitian because I truly care about people and want to help people and and I loved health and fitness. And unfortunately, the things that I was taught in school are still being taught today, but they are it's information that's keeping people stuck. And
Yeah.
it's not intentional, just like doctors aren't intentionally keeping people on medication. But if we don't look at, hey, what we're doing isn't working, people are still sick and getting sicker, shouldn't we consider how we're talking and what we're talking about and maybe do things differently? And
Right.
so I did um, a small stint in organ transplant. We did liver, kidney, pancreas. I did a little bit in bariatrics. The most of my career has been in nephrology, where the average pill count is 19. These
Oh
people
my word.
are on dialysis, 19 pills.
Mm.
And the two main causes of dialysis are hypertension and diabetes. And, we have a problem talking to them about eating every 2 to 3 hours, lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, fat-free dairy is keeping people on medication, continuing to fill dialysis chairs. And so in 2018, it literally, I was awoken like, wow, I am continually to have conversations with people. And I think they feel better and we generally like each other, but they're not leaving me any better than they came to me. And so
Yes.
I knew that I had to do differently. And so my own health, I am an avid CrossFitter. I exercise a ton. I followed the same information that I was teaching you. Let's eat every 2 to 3 hours. Let's focus on, whole grains, lots of fruits and vegetables, no fat, right? It was still the low fat, fat free, very, very lean way of eating. And it
Mhm.
sent my triglycerides through the roof. And, you know, the first thing that happened was my doctor wanted to put me on a statin. Well, that should have been, the first red light because statins don't lower triglycerides. So why are we even talking about that? And eating fat does not equal fat in the blood.
Right.
I just
Right.
read a study today about that. And so telling somebody to eat fat free, stop eating fried foods because your triglycerides are high, that's not the problem. Triglycerides come from sugar and carbohydrates. So it was all that intake of those whole grains and those fat-free pretzels and all that fruit that was causing my triglycerides to be through the roof. So I had to do something about it for my own health. And I went down the rabbit hole and I started studying intermittent fasting, low carb, ketogenic diets, carnivore, reading books by Dr. Ben Bickman, called Why We Get Sick. I highly recommend that book to your listeners. It is a very easy reader, and your jaw will be on the floor when you're done reading that, about like, oh my God, now it makes sense. Um, Dr. Robert Lustig, he wrote a book called Metabolical. Dr.
Mhm.
Jason Fung, The Diabetes and Obesity Code. Dr. Ken Berry, there's so many of these amazing doctors and professors with this information out there that just kind of gets hidden and not
Right.
talked about. And so after I started learning it, I said, you know what? I can't hold this in. I'm going to talk about it to people who want to listen. And if people want to listen, and that's really how I got started. I got introduced to some natural supplements. I don't even call them supplements. They're food products that help people bridge the gap from where they are and where they need to be. They help people make fasting easier. It helps people break up with carbohydrates because, by the way, they are very addictive. They were created that way to
Yeah.
stimulate the dopamine in our brain, for us to eat more of the snacky foods. It's no coincidence. We're not weak. We don't lack discipline or willpower. They've specifically been made. Big tobacco took all of their money and their scientists and put it into making food addictive.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Which is
so,
so crazy.
yeah, and that's kind of where I ended up today is, um, after leaving dialysis, I went into pharmaceutical sales and started my own side business while I was doing pharmaceutical sales, teaching people about metabolic health,
That's awesome.
leveraging this food product to help people make the changes that they need to make to lower their glucose, to lower their cholesterol naturally.
Right.
And people started, I started seeing healing unlike I've ever seen before in my life. And it just got me hungrier and hungrier and more passionate about it. And June of last year, I left corporate to do my own virtual practice where all I do is teach people every day about how to heal their body through food and nutrition.
That is so good. Good job of
Thank
learning
you.
so much. I mean, because like you said, you didn't learn it in college. You had to do
No,
all of this learning on your own. And now you're taking everything that you were passionate about learning and you're simplifying it for others and educating them. That's fantastic. So good job.
thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So was there ever like one specific turning point where you realized that a one size fits all nutrition approach isn't working for you or for your clients? Like,
I mean, I wouldn't say that there's like I can't remember like one specific, but
mhm,
I kind of look at a little bit from the organ transplant, from the dialysis, from the bariatrics, because most of our organ transplant were fatty liver disease. We did liver, kidney, and pancreas. So kidneys were from hypertension or diabetes. Okay,
mhm,
so let's keep that in mind. Um, Liver were from fatty liver disease. Pancreas was type 1 diabetes, right? And then if we move into bariatrics, people, I can promise you, if somebody's coming to have bariatric surgery and they're 400 plus pounds, you can bet your bottom dollar they've done counting calories before. Like,
right.
right? This
Yep.
isn't their first, this is the last resort.
Yeah.
Um, and then, so if we look at these things, and then dialysis, the two main causes of dialysis are, like I said, type 2 diabetes and hypertension. They, they all stem from food. These are all food diseases. Society has done nothing but get larger and sicker since we started counting calories. That paradigm, eat less and move more, has been preached since Jane Fonda, Richard Simmons, um, back in the 80s, right? And
Yeah.
and then snack walls came out. Snack walls is probably, everybody can relate to that, the fat-free craze. Well, fat has double the calories than carbs and protein. So if we cut back on fat, that means we can eat more carbs and protein if we're
Right.
counting calories. And yet this is what happened to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. Our bodies do not have calorie receptors. We're not a closed loop system. It's about what we eat. And here's why calories don't matter. You can take someone who has type 1 diabetes and feed them 20 to 30,000 calories and they'll die of starvation
Oh my goodness.
unless you give them insulin.
Right.
It's a hormone problem, not a calorie problem. So if we look at the foods that we eat versus how many calories they contain, your body's going to change, your health is going to improve, and you're not going to feel controlled by hunger. Hunger always wins. That's what happened to The Biggest Loser. They cut calories until they couldn't anymore.
Right.
And, they exercised until they couldn't anymore. And they tanked their metabolism. And what happened? They all gained it back.
Yeah. Yep. They work so hard, do
So
what
hard.
they're told to do,
Yeah.
and then they have a temporary success,
Mhm.
and then it all comes back and they feel like a failure. They feel like they wasted their time, their
Yeah.
effort, they wasted their hope,
Yeah.
and now they're back where they started or worse.
And that's what we see today, right? That's
Yep.
where most people are today is you walk into a gym and I mean I do it's every day I walk in and I'm like there's the same people on the treadmill. They're there before I got there. They're sweating their butt off. They're still there when I'm done
Mm.
and they look the same year
Right.
after year after year. So it's not working. Hours of cardio are not the answer.
Right.
Eating less food is not the answer. We need to look at what we're eating.
Right. So, like going off of that,
Mhm.
how would you recommend somebody to look at what they're eating? I mean, in the Hashimoto's world, we hear so many dogmas like you have to do this and you have to do this and you have to restrict this. And some of those are in direct contradiction with other experts, like telling the same people exactly the opposites. So, how do you approach that as a dietitian? How does somebody know what's right for them?
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up because there is no one size fits all. There is no perfect diet. Um, you know, there is no magic. Everybody's individualized. In general terms, if I'm just going to generalize how someone should eat, I'm going to say we should all practice some type of time restricted eating. Now, the extent of that is going to be individual, but everybody can go 12 hours with gut rest. That is healthy. So guess what? When I teach somebody about time restricted eating, I say 12 to 16 hours. And then based on you is where we'll gauge, do we do longer? Do we do shorter? Um, every person I think can agree on whether you're vegan, paleo, vegetarian, or carnivore, that the most important thing about what we eat is to get rid of ultra processed foods. Like
Yeah.
even with Hashimoto's, right? We should cut out ultra processed food. It's not even food. Y'all, food is information to our body. And our body was made to process information from carbohydrates, from proteins, from fats, from real foods. When we ultra process them and we add chemicals and we add food dyes, our body really doesn't know what to do. Like with that information, the proper hormones that control our hunger, that control our satiety, aren't released. And so we can keep eating and yet we should be full. If we look at calories, I just ate 2,000 calories. How in the world can I still be hungry? Well, your body didn't get the proper information it needed, right? Your leptin wasn't turned on. Your ghrelin wasn't turned off, right? The GLP-1 wasn't created in our gut. So some time restricted eating, eliminating ultra processed foods. We have been encouraged since the 80s in the invention of the food pyramid to eat
Right.
lots of grains and lots of fruits and vegetables. Now, we don't need that many grains. Grains are carbohydrates. Grains convert to sugar. Fruit converts to sugar. Now, will have people argue with me all day. But honey's natural, fruit's natural, grains are natural. They are. So is sugarcane, but so are rocks. Do we eat rocks, right? It's what it does in our body, right? And if you have an intolerance because you have insulin resistance or you have type 2 diabetes, you don't need so much of these things. So I think like cutting back on the amount of carbohydrates that we eat, and I think focusing on animal proteins, not because I am saying that, you know, I understand people do things for ethical reasons, but if we're looking at a physiological answer, animal proteins are healthier than plant-based proteins. That
Right.
that
Yep.
has nothing to do with ethics, with anything. It's just pure science. The
Yep.
bioavailability. Plants have things called anti-nutrients. They have lectins, they have oxalates, phytic acids, things that block the absorption of proper nutrients. Y'all, plants can't bite or kick or climb a tree or run. So they release chemical warfare. And it is real. It's real. And so, you know, while I used to be a big fan on eat a ton of spinach, eat a ton of these things, beets and raspberries, y'all, they have chemicals in them that attack the inside of our body. And you wonder why sometimes you're achy, but I'm doing that fruit smoothie. It's got green juice in it. Why do I hurt all the time? Why does my stomach look like I'm 9 months pregnant? Because I'm eating all the things I'm supposed to. Well, are you really supposed to? So time restricted eating, focusing on animal proteins, eliminating seed oils, right? Seed
Hmm.
oils are highly inflammatory. What do I mean by seed oils? Sunflower oil, peanut oil, safflower oil, canola oil, vegetable oil, cottonseed oil, um, probably forgetting one. Focusing on avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil, believe it or not, butter, real butter, ghee, lard, tallow. These are your best sources of good quality fats. And then high fiber. What you can tolerate in that category of fiber is going to be individual, but things such as avocados, asparagus, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, um, cauliflower, zucchini, yellow squash, cabbage, cucumbers. Now, again, it's going to be individual on what of those vegetables are okay for you to eat. It's all individual, but what I'm a big fan of. And if you eat those foods, there's no need to calorie count. Like really, your body will release the proper hormones. You will feel satisfied, and you won't feel the need to snack all of the time.
Right. Right. I love that. And so one question that comes to mind as you're counting all of those out, which I love all of those, and I've had Sally Norton on the
Yeah.
podcast to talk about oxalates. And I tell you, I got more feedback after that interview than probably any other interview because people are like, what do I eat now? Because I was eating all of this spinach and the almonds and doing all of these healthy superfoods. And I know for me, like every morning, I had organic cacao because it's a superfood and it's super high in oxalates. And every morning I had chia seeds for the fiber and the healthy fat, and it's super high in oxalates.
Right,
And
probably in almond milk or oat milk,
yep,
right? Yep, because
yep.
it's
So all of a sudden I'm like, what do I eat? But I really, really appreciate that you just listed off a bunch of stuff that we can eat, not just the can'ts. So
yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Well, we focus on what we can't have, and we want
Right.
that much more. But there's so many things that we can have. And
Yeah.
and look, I mean, no disrespect when I say this, but to be the smartest species in the world, we're the dumbest. I mean, you know, an animal will eat something and it makes them sick, and they do not eat it again. They like, they're done.
Right. Not
We
us.
eat it, and it's like we're bloated, we're constipated, we have acid reflux, and we keep eating it because
Yeah.
somebody said it's healthy.
Right. Right. So then what what would be the biggest things that you look for to figure out, is this particular
Yeah.
food good for me or not? Especially if it's on the things that you just said, like an animal protein or high in good quality fat, not ultra processed. How do you whittle down from there to figure out what is personally good
Right.
or not?
Right. So some of the things I like to look at well, number one, I'm going to say, what is your goal? Like, not everybody's goal is to lose weight. That's not my goal. My goal is to be metabolically healthy, to be very insulin sensitized, sensitive, to be, to be lean, but not too thin. Like, I want to put on muscle. So number one, it's going to be, what is your goal? That's the most important. I think 98% of people I work with want to lose weight. That is their goal. So then we look at, okay, have you had labs done? I love to look at labs. That just gives us an idea of what's going on the inside, right? Because the outside, I went on for years thinking I was pristine health, and the whole time my triglycerides were terrible, right? I
Right.
had no idea. You don't feel that. Um,
Right. So
I
which
like
labs do you like? Is it like fasting
Yep, like I
insulin?
love a fasting insulin, which nobody has. And guys, I would encourage you, please ask for a fasting insulin. And your goal is 6 or less. That's optimal. Now your lab work may have a range on there that's like up to 20. That is not accurate. That is not optimal. Okay. I like to look at an HDL, the good cholesterol. Most people don't talk about that. Why? Because they're not really a medication to bump that up. So we don't hear a lot about that. But you want your HDL above 55. Um, LDL, I don't really look at. I don't really look so much at LDL, and I don't look so much at total cholesterol, because if you have high HDL, low triglycerides, that ratio 1.5 or less, you're pretty metabolically healthy. And so LDL really doesn't become an issue unless it's small and oxidized. Well, how does it get that way? It gets that way from high levels of inflammation and from being very insulin resistant, right? So those are some of the labs. We look at thyroid, right? You're the thyroid expert. We're going to look at thyroid because that is huge. That's huge. And I think a lot of times people are thrown on Synthroid, and it's way too fast when we need to look at the other things that are going on, right? What else do I like to look at? CRP, which is the level of inflammation, is your C-reactive protein. If you're highly inflamed, it's going to likely mean that you have a lot of cortisol going on in your body, which means you're going to have a lot of visceral fat. You're going to have a harder time losing weight. We look at A1C. Now, A1C isn't as important to me as a fasting insulin, because you can have a normal A1C and be very insulin resistant. So those are just some easy labs that everybody will have access to. So then like I said, I like to look at your labs. I want to see your goal. And then literally what I will tell people is, okay, let's look at your lifestyle. Do you work 9 to 5? Great. Let's talk about some intermittent fasting. That is the easiest thing to incorporate into a working person's schedule, because a lot of times people stress out and they get anxious because they're trying to figure out, what do I eat? What do I bring with me? How do I fit in? I'm going to eat in the car. Let's just not eat. We're okay. It's okay to not eat. I promise you're not going to starve. You're not going to wreck your metabolism. You're actually going to improve it because you're going to allow your insulin to come down. My goal is to get insulin low and keep it low. So that means stress, sleep. That means cutting out the ultra processed foods, incorporating the time restricted eating. And then I'm a big fan on protein. I think as a nation, especially as women, as we age, we don't get enough protein. I don't know if we're afraid of bulking up. I don't know if we're afraid of gaining weight, but we don't eat enough protein. We need protein. And the older we get, the less we absorb properly. And so we need more. And I tell people I'm a big fan of 1 gram per pound of your goal weight. And in a perfect world, we're going to get that from animal foods, not a lean chicken breast, but a chicken thigh, maybe some with the skin on it, right? Maybe some 80-20 ground beef, and don't be afraid of the fat. Some eggs with the yolk, right? There's so much nutrition in the parts of this food that we discard because of the fear of fat. And then I'm going
Right.
to encourage healthy fats, right? Using butter, using the bacon, like leave the grease in the pan from cooking the bacon to cook your eggs in. Um, but I even go so far as to say, what kind of pan are you cooking your eggs in, right? We don't talk about that, but that is important, right? Are you using the non-stick that have the terrible chemicals in it? They call them the forever chemicals, and they've been shown to cause what they call them obesogens. They affect
Mm-hmm.
our hormones. They affect thyroid. They affect all of that. And then if you don't, I leave vegetables as a personal preference. Not everybody wants to do vegetables. I will say this, if you have autoimmune disease, I'm a big advocate for carnivore. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh my God, that's extreme. Well, autoimmune is extreme. And if you're highly inflamed and your autoimmune disease is uncontrolled, then carnivore is a ultra elimination diet. But animal proteins are very healing. They're very anti-inflammatory. And if you struggle with an autoimmune condition, it's going to be very beneficial for you. Does that mean you have to do it forever? No, but that's going to be where we start. Um, and then so for people that are in that position, we're not going to eat a lot of vegetables, right? We're going to focus on our fat and our protein. But
Right.
if you don't, then I still recommend that you get the bulk of your vegetables from non-starchy and your fruit. Yes, I know fruit's natural, but fruit is genetically modified, even if it's organic. A grape shouldn't be that big. Okay. An apple shouldn't be that big. Fruit is different than it was hundreds of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So when we eat fruit, we're eating a sugar bomb. So I'm not saying that you can't have it, but we don't need to snack on it all day. And I always encourage people to eat it at the end of their meal. Save it for the end after you've had a good source of fiber and protein. It will lessen that glucose spike, right? So that's really it. And I let people kind of pick out. I don't ever say, Esther, you have to eat beef and green beans. I let people kind of pick the foods that they want, or you're not going to follow it. But I will give
Right.
people structure. I don't count calories. If we count anything, it's going to be carbohydrates. And and we do that if you are type 2 diabetic. We do that if you have fatty liver. We do that if you're morbidly obese.
Right. One of my nurse practitioners a while back, that was the first thing she recommended is that I go carnivore. So I'd love your perspective because I eat meat, but I don't enjoy eating meat. And the thought of going carnivore, my initial thought was I'm going to starve because I don't like that. So, what would be some tips for somebody thinking about going carnivore? Obviously, before they dive in, they're going to do a ton of research and figure out
Yes.
menu plans. But what would be some basic tips for
Yeah.
somebody considering that?
Yep. So I'm going to tell you from personal preference, because when I went in carnivore last year to do it so that I could speak of it, to have a lot of clients that go carnivore, and I feel like it's only fair for me to live it so that I can speak it. And it was a fantastic learning experience for me because I failed carnivore. Carnivore did not fail me, so I'm glad you're asking these questions. So take it from somebody who did not do it right. And guys, this is what I do for 19 years. This is all I've done is food and nutrition. So if I fail it, then there's going to be a likelihood that a lot of people fail it. And here's why. Women in particular fail it, and they tank their thyroid because they do not eat enough fat. So if you're cutting out, okay, so let me just give you a brief overview. You have your 3 macronutrients. You have carbs, you have protein, and you have fat. 2 of those are sources of energy. Carbs and fat. Those are energy nutrients. Protein is not an energy macronutrient. It can be converted into energy, but primarily it's for growth and repair and enzymes and tendons and muscles and that, right? You get your energy from fat or carbs. If we're going carnivore, we're eliminating carbs as a source of energy. So
Right.
all we're left with is protein and fat. So fat is already feared. We are, as a nation, we fear fat. As a sex, females fear fat even more than men. Okay, so
Yep.
now we're faced with this issue. The third reason we fear fat, okay, women don't eat enough fat, but fat is very satiating. So if you eat more fat, you're going to get fuller faster. And so you have a very good chance of being energy deficient or malnourished, right? So that's what happened to me. I went into it, and you almost need a 1-to-1 ratio of fat to protein. So if
Oh,
me,
wow.
I'm going to try to eat 130 grams of protein a day, that means I need to aim for a minimum of 100 grams of fat. Okay.
Okay.
That is very hard to do. I ate a lot of chicken. That means you see people on there eating sticks of butter, and that's a good reason. You can't eat enough. You're trying to eat enough fat. It's hard to eat enough fat and enough protein to supply your body with the proper nutrients. So if you're not meeting those energy needs with fat, you're going to feel like poop. Your
Yeah.
energy level's going to tank. You're going to lose weight very rapidly, right? And you don't want to have to convert the protein that you're eating into energy. So if someone's going to think about going carnivore, you've got to focus on those extremely fatty cuts of meat, right? There's a reason that carnivores eat ribeyes. There's a reason that they cook in fat and then top their meat with fat. It's to supply themselves with the proper amount of energy that's hard to eat. I mean, think about it. One egg has about 5 grams of fat, about 7 grams of protein. Well, let's say you eat 6 eggs, that's still only 30 grams of fat. That's still only, what, 6 times 7, 42 grams of protein. Sometimes 6 eggs is very satiating. Protein and fat are very satiating, and they take a long time to digest. So if you've eaten that and you're satisfied, well, then you might not be so hungry when it's time to eat again. So you eat 1 or 2 meals, and then
Right.
you see how it's like it's an amazing way to eat, but you have to do it properly.
Okay. So definitely not something that somebody is just going to jump into like,
Yeah,
oh,
unless you yeah,
I'm just going to have burgers today. Like that's not a healthy way to do it.
right, right, right. And it's you've got to make sure you get a proper electrolytes. Most people don't add in electrolytes. When you cut out carbs, you're going to lose a lot of water. Your insulin level is going to come down. Insulin tells the kidney to hold salt. So when insulin comes down, the kidney releases salt. With that goes water, sodium, potassium, all those minerals, and you have to replace those. So making sure you're focusing on getting enough fluids, that you're getting a ton of electrolytes. I'm talking about like adding in salt, pouring salt on your tongue, putting salt in your water, liberally seasoning your food, which again, we've feared salt as well as
Yes.
fat for so long. It's an amazing way to eat. It truly is. And it does a lot of things to help people, especially with autoimmune. And as long as it's done properly, you can do it, and you can maintain it, and you can be healthy. I personally think it's something that's incorporated. Number one, if you have autoimmune, yes, give it 60, 90 days and then readdress. But for others, it's a great way to reset if you want to do it once a quarter or seasonally. I'm a big fan of eating seasonally when things are in season naturally, not because we've hauled it around the world, but because it's naturally available at this time. I think it's a great sort of concept
Yeah.
to bring in.
Yes. Oh my goodness. You have been so helpful. Thank you. So if
Oh,
somebody wants to learn more or work with you so they can do like a trial or
yeah.
a run of carnivore, what is the best way for them to connect with you? How can they find you?
Awesome. So I have a link tree. I think that's the best I'll supply if you want to put it in the show notes. That way I'm on Facebook, where we connected, just under Shannon Davis. I am on LinkedIn under Shannon Davis. I'm on, don't judge, but I'm on TikTok. Okay. I'm not an actress, y'all, so don't be harsh. But I'm on TikTok under, SL Davis 6580. And that's also where I'm at on Instagram
Okay.
and X. So I'm on all of them, some more than others. But I mean, I am old school. I'll give y'all my phone number. I'm just super easy, my email and phone number, but I just put everything inside a link tree, and it just you can pick and choose however you want to connect with me.
Nice. I'll definitely put that in the show notes. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Like, this has been so very helpful for me, and I'm sure it's been helpful for everybody who's listening. So, everybody who's listening, thank you for joining. Come back next week for another episode of Health with Hashimoto's, and I'll see you then.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mhm.